3 years into Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the war-torn nation is as tense and as uncertain as it was in those harrowing days of February 2022. Yet remarkably, Ukraine's biggest concern is no longer limited to the Kremlin's unrelenting military aggression and the missiles falling from the sky. It's instead this new threat looms on the horizon, one that emanates from its most vital ally, the United States. And President Trump's verbal assault on Ukrainian President Zelensky has sparked an international firestorm, calling him a dictator, characterized a diplomatic trip by his own economic envoy, Scott, an individual barely recognizable on the global stage, as a waste of time. Trump has rattled the already fragile dynamic between Kyiv and Washington, and his remarks, which closely echo the rhetoric of Putin, the Russian president, or Putin handlers, let's say, because I'm not sure Putin is really still capable of articulating words from the inside of a Smeg fridge. But they're not just an attack on Zelensky himself, but an alarming shift in America's position and posture towards Ukraine's existence. Trump's claims about Zelensky, particularly the charge that he's a dictator who refuses to hold elections, are demonstrably false. Ukraine's elections are legally postponed under martial law, a necessity given the active war and the logistical impossibilities of organising a nationwide vote. An active war that is a response to an aggressor nation. Even Zelensky's staunchest domestic critics acknowledge that calling for elections under current conditions would serve only to divide Ukraine and hand Moscow a strategic advantage. Trump's assertion, then, is less about accuracy and more about framing a narrative conducive to his vision of a quick peace, one that's far more favourable to Russian interests than to Ukraine's survival. And his exaggerations don't stop there. He falsely claimed that Zelensky's approval rating had plummeted to 4%, when in reality, a recent Kyiv International Institute of Sociology places public trust in him at between 57 and 63%. And similarly, Trump grossly inflated US aid to Ukraine, suggesting that it surpassed $350 billion, whereas the real figure is closer to $183 billion, much of which is tied to replenishing US military stockpiles. These distortions serve a clear purpose: to justify the US stepping away from its leadership role in supporting Ukraine while bolstering an isolationist, America First policy that many in Trump's base support. Trump's comments have had an unintended consequence, however, in Ukraine. Rather than weakening Zelensky, they have momentarily united the country behind him. Even members of the opposition, typically fierce critics of his administration, have come to his defense. Yaroslav Zhelezniak of the opposition party, Holos, rebuffed Trump's remarks, saying, "We may have different opinions about Zelensky, but only Ukrainian citizens have the right to judge his support." Not a bad line. This surge in domestic unity is crucial, and given the growing fatigue of the war. And after 3 years of conflict, after 12 years of pressure, millions displaced, hundreds of thousands dead or wounded, Ukrainian morale has been severely tested. Yet, in the face of Trump's attacks, many Ukrainians see the need to rally round their leader, however imperfect, as a symbol of national sovereignty. Trump's remarks have not gone unchallenged in the US as well. While Vice President J.D. Vance criticized Zelensky for responding publicly to Trump's attacks, many Democrats and even some Republicans have reaffirmed their support for Ukraine. Historically, aid to Kyiv has enjoyed bipartisan backing, but Trump's rhetoric signals an intention to upend that consensus. And with upcoming meetings between Trump, Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, NATO allies are growing increasingly concerned about the prospect of the US sidelining Europe in any potential negotiations with Russia. The revelation that US and Russian officials have already met in Saudi Arabia to discuss a ceasefire without Ukrainian representation only deepens these anxieties. Now, let me float one idea to you. What if President Trump were to withdraw from NATO entirely? Would then a membership of NATO be appealing to Zelensky and to Ukraine? A NATO that doesn't cover America. It seems absurd, But is that the direction that Trump is going? A worthless NATO, of which, if Ukraine wants to join that group, he can. As NATO braces for another grueling year of conflict, therefore, Trump's words are more than political bluster. They carry real-world consequences. And Ukraine has found itself negotiating not just with Russia, but with an America unwilling to continue its support. European leaders, too, must now contemplate the possibility of a US administration openly favouring Russian interests over transatlantic unity. For Ukrainians, the message is clear. Their fate remains in their own hands. As one anonymous Ukrainian officer put it from the front lines, no shells will take up rifles, no rifles will grab shovels. And such resilience underscores that while external allies may waver, Ukraine's will to fight remains unbroken. But as this global landscape shifts, as the tectonic plates move, the biggest questions will be, will the West continue to stand with Ukraine, or will Trump's rhetoric become reality?